Good morning, Culminators. Or if you're listening to this at some other time of the day, good afternoon. I am very, very pleased to have with me today the man who has been recognized once again as the most conservative member of Congress, Paul Gosar, of the Arizona's 4th District. Thank you for joining us, Congressman Gosar.
Ron, thank you for having me.
We have, as I mentioned right before we went on, and this is something that it's just become a custom on my show to mention, that we're old Twitter friends who have never had a chance to speak in person before, and it seemed like this was the moment where I could maybe grab you, and things are about to slow down in Washington. Right? Nothing's going on. Anything going on in Congress these days?
Oh, well, we're promoting the demonstrations outside the Supreme Court. We're passing and sending money over to Ukraine that we don't have. And, there's no accountability for members of Congress and particular leadership. So I guess nothing that really matters.
Nothing that really matters, and evidently nothing that we should really be hearing about, because unless and until your bill, HR 7641, Protecting Free Speech Act, passes, we may very well soon find ourselves to be subject entirely to a ministry of truth. Tell me about that bill.
Well, I mean, we've seen this administration now through Department of Homeland Security and Mr. Secretary Mayorkas putting out this board of disinformation. So now what they're going to do is regulate the town square as to what is permissible speech and what is not, picking winners and losers. And that's not acceptable. That is not acceptable whatsoever.
It certainly isn't. Do you have any idea how they have in mind mechanically for this board to work?
I don't, but I suspect that it will be taking all our records, i.e. utilizing the background of the Patriot Act in regards to gathering all the information and using it in some way, and then deciphering and using filters, algorithms that are created to search and seize on certain terms and phrases.
And I think what we have to worry about the most is not that there's going to be a sort of public takedown or a sort of ministerial announcement, but rather that they're going to work behind the scenes. They're going to partner with, I'll put both words in quotes. I don't know if you're familiar with the case that was filed by my office in California on behalf of the big influencer named Rogan O'Handley, otherwise known as DC Drano. This is exactly what the state of California did. They set up basically a ministry of election truth. And as you observed, you put it behind, you call it security. You call it Homeland Security. They set this board up as election security. And they had a 95% takedown rate. They had a direct line to Twitter. And when they would identify a concerning tweet to Twitter, the tweet came down. And my guy, who has over 1 million, maybe it's 2 million now, followers on Instagram, tweeted something critical about suggesting that California's election integrity might have left something to be desired. This election security board signaled Twitter, and he was banned from Twitter. This was in January. The election was in November. Funny thing about threats to security is they never go away.
That's exactly right. And you can't give up on your freedoms in search of security, because what ends up happening under that misnomer, you lose the liberty and freedom and you get nothing in return but anarchy.
Any hope that this bill might move through Congress?
I don't know, Ron. I don't think it will, because, with the realization of an election that Democrats are being, lambasted, at least at what it looks like from the standpoint right now, they will use anything and everything to stay relevant in the conversation of trying to keep the majority. So I don't think it will happen. I find it offensive that big tech wouldn't look at this. They're building a portfolio that, when we take the reins, take back the majority, I think there are opportunities galore to remedy this.
A lot of people on Twitter, I'm sure you see this all the time, and you see me complaining about it all the time. First of all, how much is Paul Gosar and how much is the staff? You ever pick it up yourself and get into the mix?
Yeah, well, what we end up doing, we do a lot by team, because that's the magic of a team, is that we play off each other's ideas. And so I think that's great. And I'll give you an example. One of our things that we did was the Chronics, that we actually put a hit message in a series of tweets. And that was Epstein didn't kill himself. And we did 23 tweets. And I got to tell you, Ron, we had the most fun of any day that we've had, because the whole team was trying to come up with these 23 tweets in line items to try to get that message across. And it got 30 some million hits on it. And, when your taxi cab driver says, "You're the congressman that did that Chronics," you hit a home run.
And that really is an amazing thing. I mean, you're really dealing with Americans by doing this kind of stuff on a human, personal level. And there's nothing the other guys hate more than that, because they're trying to create this technocratic elite that is going to run everything for us and tell us what's good for us. And they don't operate that way.
No, they want government daycare for everything and anything. And we want our freedoms and our autonomy to be, to make the choices ourselves, and to have that ability for free speech on the public square.
Now, you mentioned the election. Here it is, mid-May. Republicans are getting excited because a lot of things are breaking our way.
Mm-hmm.
So this actually goes back to what I was saying before I interrupted myself. On Twitter, what we see our friends saying, many of our friends saying, is, but it doesn't matter what the polls say, they're going to cheat. We can't win. It's all. Explain why, from your point of view, if you agree with me, that even though much of that is true, why they can't. I mean, we know somehow for all the cheating, there are not 100 senators and 435 representatives who are Democrats. So obviously there's more to it than that.
Right. And the ire of the American public has actually been drawn up after this last election. And so one of the things that we've done when we've talked across our state and across the country is get known. Go to your county recorder. Ask them to walk you through your ballot process. How does that ballot come to me? What are the checks and balances that it goes through? How do you make sure that there's no fraud going on there? I believe that most Americans, that when a recorder takes their questions, they are now being served notice that we are watching. And I think that inherently tells the recorder that there's a right and a wrong way. So I don't think that we'll see too much, but I mean, we got to be on the guard, and we have to have some checks and balances. And as a Democrat actually put in the movie Kill Chain, an HBO movie on the Democrats made in regards to election integrity and fraud. We need to get to paper ballots that have watermarked and numerically numbered, and take away the computer between the counting of that ballot and the person. I don't know what else I can say.
I mean, it is extraordinary that so many countries that we consider to be, they're smaller countries, they're Western style democracies, whether it's in Europe, whether it's Israel, they're able to run elections, get results immediately.
Right.
And yet, on the other hand, when Congress, when your colleagues on both sides of the aisle look at reform, we had that nonsense from the beginning of this term, where they wanted to actually nationalize supervision of elections to make sure that it stayed bad and got worse.
Right, and they claimed that it was the cleanest election ever. Well, if it was the cleanest election ever, why would you want to change it and federalize it? It doesn't make any sense to me, and it doesn't make any sense to the average person.
What do you think we can do? As a lawyer, I was involved in some election litigation, and in some non-litigation activism, let's put it that way.
Mhm.
In other words, I was at the Philadelphia Convention Center trying to edge our way in when we had a court order that said we could
Right.
get in. The judiciary as a whole absolutely blew it.
Yeah.
And it is so extraordinary to me. Do you think, I mean, and that really had a gigantic socialization or propaganda effect on the entire way that people look at the fraud in the 2020 election, because
Mhm.
there's still this, unless it involves abortion, in which case the judiciary is completely illegitimate. But it seems as if the fact that so many judges found so many reasons not to consider any of the election challenges was so distressing, because those of us who were on the street saw what was with our own eyes, saw what was happening. Do you think there's any way to change that narrative, or is it just going to be us and them, and it's a grudge match, and we just need to push our way through?
No, I definitely think there's there's an application here, and that is, we the people in the states gave to the federal government its limited powers, and we got to take it back. We've been asleep at the wheel. We've been allowing the executive branch, we've been allowing the courts to get fat and sassy, to be honest with you. And so it's now the duty of governors, whether they be Republicans or Democrats, to stand up for the sovereignty of their state. Now, I'll give you an example on immigration. You know, it's, Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution guarantees the state's protection from invasion. So no other court ruling actually applies here. So why not having a governor put the gauntlet down, put their National Guard on the border and say, no one passes, go, do not collect $200, do not go past go. Pick the fight with the Supreme Court to make them take that, because the state has remedies that you and I don't have. We have to go through a process where the state can remedy right to the Supreme Court.
Also, I see two issues here. One is there are a lot of governors of affected states. Something about becoming a governor makes Republicans lose their spines.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. They're real tough when they're legislators or when they're running, and the second they get into that governor's mansion, they become great conciliators. I don't know what that's about. Maybe you have some insight into it. And the other part is, you can line up National Guardsmen every 5 feet across the border at Arizona. If the Biden administration decides to hopscotch over you and land a plane full of immigrants and drop them, airdrop them in the dead of night, which we find out they've been doing. I mean, this is a lawless federal government.
It is. But the only way we got, Ron, is that power of the state to start looking at this. Now, also, there's other opportunities here. And once again, we're given a toolbox under Article 1, Section 8. So Congress is not without means. And I'll give you an example. One of my constituents actually called our office and said, listen, how do you get one of these letters of marque and reprisal? And we're like, why are you asking? And he said, because of its powers, because Congress denotes the bounty, going back to the pirate days.
Right.
So why can't Congress dictate, okay, you're violating the American laws in regards to trafficking human beings and fentanyl. We're going to put a bounty on your head. Okay. Can you imagine, what's his name? Dog the Bounty Hunter and all these friends looking, and even cartel members against cartel members. How about even members of a secretarial cabinet position not doing their job? Congress initiating that application saying, listen, you have to be held accordingly for high crimes. Why not start looking at that creatively and belittling the Department of Justice to the point where they're forced to take the case?
The Department of Justice is by far the most troubling department of the United States right now. I mean, I think you can find issues with all of them, but what began in earnest during the Obama administration it's mind-boggling how they have just, and this of course includes the FBI.
Right.
When people talk about, you know, there's when you and I were growing up, the FBI was legendary, and that may not have been justified. They did a great job with propaganda, and you know, there was nonetheless this sense that there was a limit on just how bad it could get. But now there seems, why is there no accountability whatsoever when people screw up in the FBI? Well, they either screw up or just purposely do things that are politically motivated. I mean, all the losing of records and losing of files and losing of recordings. Does anyone ever get disciplined, fired, anything at the FBI?
Not that we know of. I mean, you look at Fast and Furious, Benghazi, the IRS, the unmasking of American citizens, Hillary Clinton's emails. How about Russiagate, Ukrainegate? How about Bidengate and Obamagate? Nobody. I mean, yeah, we're starting to see Durham actually coming forward, but it's slow and methodical. Whereas the denial and the deception is front and quick and easy. Yeah, and that's what frustrates the American public. That's one of the big things I've talked about is until we get back to the uniformity of equal application of the law and law enforcement according to the crimes, not to the politics, our republic ceases to exist. That's why we're in a communal Marxist fascist state right now.
We are. I mean, at the end of the day, you really can't avoid that conclusion. I have never felt so alienated from the United States government as I do now. I mean, there's a real sense that anyone who can get away with anything is deserving of some level of folk hero status if it's against that thrust. Do you think there's going to really be, assuming that with God's help, we do recapture both houses, do you think there's going to be an appetite to really follow up on this stuff?
I don't think there's a choice, Ron. I think there has the must, because if we're not going to take the reins and do the hard work and do it right, and put transparency and put light on these problems called Congress and Washington, D.C. in this bubble of heresy that's here, our republic is gone. And we've lost the people. That's the biggest key, is we've lost the people, because they see one tier of justice being held to for them, and bureaucrats and legislators being held to a completely different status. So we have to. It's if it's not me, who, and if not now, when.
You're quoting, of course, the great scholar, great Talmudic scholar of ancient times, Hillel the Great, and in fact, it is what we call in Jewish thought Eis lasos, a time to act. I mean, it becomes a bit of a cliche, and they love this cliche on the left. There's never been a more important election in American history. Well, right. That might have actually been true every time for the last 6 or 8 years, but boy, is this one huge, because the amazing thing about this White House is it's on autopilot. The person who is putatively in charge is obviously not making policy, not making decisions. He's not even allowed to talk to reporters. So if you could recapture the legislative branch, is there any fear? Does anyone ever wonder whether they're just going to do what they want? And let's say this bill that we were talking about before, the Restoration of Free Speech Act, passes in the next House, and it passes in the Senate, and it's veto proof. And they just say, well, we're going to do it anyway. We're living in a time when whoever thought, for example, that a major Supreme Court opinion would be leaked months before it's supposed to be handed down by the court is anything beyond, I wish I could remember the phrase you used, fascist.
Communo-fascist. Communo-Marxist fascist.
I would find a way to throw Wall Street in there too, because this is not a fight in which capital is standing on the side or being attacked. I mean, it is tariff, although people are definitely taking their lumps now in that department. when I talked a couple minutes ago about what happens when Republicans become elected governors, unless they're Ron DeSantis or a
That's
handful
exactly. That's going to make that
right.
point. Ron DeSantis is the exception to the rule, and he's giving people that spine to say, "Wait a minute, if Ron can do it, why can't I?" And there's people like myself and those people in my state that are asking, "Why can't we have a Ron DeSantis? Why can't we elect somebody like a Kerry Lake that's going to say, what? No, that's not how we do things anymore. We're standing up for the sovereignty of the state. Let's pick this fight." Why don't we have attorney generals from our states, starting to take on the fight on the sovereignty of the state? We're starting to see it. Now we just need more. And there's plenty of leaders out there that are governors. They wouldn't be elected governors if they didn't have some charisma. We just need to empower them, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, who stand up for the sovereignty of the state and take their lumps. You are elected to represent the people and to take the lumps that are given to the people.
Yes, I mean, I remember, my first time I ever heard of Mike Pence was when he folded as governor on that, on that bill. It was what was the content of the bill? But it was something that that the Rainbow Lobby wasn't happy with, and they threatened to stop having conventions or something, but he folded like a cheap card table.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think President Trump folded quite a few times when there were moments where it might have been.
Well, but Ron, I look at his situation and here was an unenviable task. So he had the media against him, he had the Democrats against him, and he could not afford to have the rank and file or the Republican leadership against him.
Any more than they were.
And they were. And, one of the things that I look at is that's why you had to have a personality like Donald Trump to make that headway. And he did make some headway. But it gets back to the same thing that I told him. Where did we have justice? The equal application of justice. You got skewered from Bill Barr just like everybody else. He ran the clock out on you. And we have to have fortitude. You look what happened in Virginia, where the Attorney General removed the whole Civil Rights Division. They said it couldn't happen, and he did it anyway. Here is a naturalized citizen doing his job to remedy the equal application of the rule of law in the state of Virginia. We need more of that, not less of that. But imagine the value of 50 attorney generals, 50 governors attacking. This is the same thing they do to us. Attacks from all different angles. That's the Alinsky rules for radicals. That's the whole detail that they're doing here. Make the federal government defend itself. The other thing that we have to do is that we better take back the power of the purse. Because if we don't allow that money to come out, you can't spend a dime. So this implementation of this Ministry of Magic, as I talked about, the Truth Disinformation Board, if we don't give them a dime or a penny, they can't make it.
And that also means the continuing resolution addiction has got to stop.
Yeah.
What happened to budgets? What the hell happened to budgets and national emergencies? Come on, govern.
Yeah. And my suggestion, Ron, is why not have the discussion, a line by line transparency, light illuminating on the defense budget? How is it that Russia, China, North Korea have the supersonic missiles? We don't, but it was our technology. How is it that now we are giving away our stockpiles of missiles to Ukraine when we won't get them replaced in a good year, 2 to 3 years from now? And with the supply chain interrupted, they don't know when we're going to get it. So we're giving up our defense mechanisms on behalf of Ukraine. And we don't even know how that money's being spent. We're paying off Ukrainian soldiers more than we're paying our soldiers. We left 80 billion in hardware and military assets in Afghanistan when we retreated. We left our men and women behind. We left people that were good to us behind. And we have no accountability of this.
Right.
And now we're making a woke military, like we've made a woke generals group. Something's got to come about. What happened with the last audit where some $200 billion were lost? We need to have accountability, and that needs to be line item by line item. And when you make an example of one, and I bring up the military because that is our bread and butter, somebody's not investing right if we don't have hypersonic technology. And if we do it to the military, Department of Labor, Department of Education, all these other departments are going to go, well, we're next. We better start straighten up.
Well, that's an ambitious goal, but I mean, if we don't do it, we're talking about what, $9 trillion a year that we're spending. I mean,
it's crazy,
mind-boggling.
Oh, it's crazy. And I mean, and now when you look at this $40 billion, thank God that Rand Paul's holding it up.
Unbelievable.
It's going to nonprofits. The slush fund for Soros-backed nonprofits. I mean, for God's sakes, this is crazy. Don't tell me one person can't make a difference. You look at the buying off of DAs and attorney generals, and then you see the chaos that's created when we actually don't incarcerate people for stealing up to $1,000 on the streets from businesses. And you wonder why people that say there is no justice in this country anymore.
It's corrosive. It's corrosive. I mean, do you think that to a large extent, it's an effort to actually demoralize people and just get them to give up and just let them roll over us? I think it is too.
I absolutely agree. But I always remind people, it's always darkest before the light. It takes one person to start the trend. I look at Ron DeSantis as being that person that started. People are mesmerized, whether it be from Arizona, Wyoming, Washington State, Montana, Alabama, about how this little engine that could out of Florida is standing up to these big monikers, not winning everything, but he's fighting. And that's what the American people want. They want fighters. They may not agree with somebody all about their views and profiles, but the fact that they're fighting for the little man and the mom and pops on Main Street, that family, that business, they want somebody to fight for them. How can we treat them any differently or lesser than somebody coming into this country illegally, or there's stealing and robbing, from everybody else? Something's wrong here. And we got to get back to that moral compass of what's right and wrong and standing up for the American citizen.
You couldn't agree with you more. And I know that your constituents agree with you because they keep sending you back. I hope that they keep doing that and that you are a part of the leadership of the upcoming Republican majority in the House of Representatives, which with God's help, we will see.
Well, demand it. It's not if, it's the American people demand it. Look at these people that are wanting to get your vote. Look them in the eyes. Ask them questions. Don't use debates. Bring them one by one. Look at their heart. Ask them the hard, tough questions. You're doing yourself no favors if you're not doing that.
It's good advice. Thank you very much for joining us.
Ron, it's great to put face with now the Twitter account. And God bless you. Thanks for smiling.
A real pleasure. All the best. I hope we'll be in touch again soon. So long.
Keep doing it. Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
Ron.